Started Masechet Bava Batra, which is different than the last two Masechtot, Baba Kama and Baba Metzia, because in Baba Batra we're dealing with civil law. In other words, most of the laws that and the takanot and the halachot that we're going to hear about in Masechet Baba Batra are coming from takanot chachamim, from the Beit Din, and they're usually coming out from understanding human nature, having an agreement between two people and between an individual and the community that he's part of, from the deep understanding that we have to have limits and rules in order to keep a just and fine business community within our cities. And of course, these are all based on very moral and clear Torah behaviors, as don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, do the right and the good in the eyes of God, eliminate evil from your midst. But these are all civil laws, and the power is in the hand of the Beit Din to decide those rules according to each community, something which, by the way, we see all over Jewish diaspora the last 2,000 years, that every city, every community, and every Beit Din in a community had the power to decide the different rules of the people of that same community. And a very big part in Masechet Bava Batra, especially the first part where we're holding, is about neighbors, relationship between neighbors, and the limits and the borders between two neighbors, and my responsibility for myself and for the public area around me. And the laws regarding neighbors, which is very interesting, is also dependent in how Chachamim understand human nature and what is it possible to accept from a behavior and what is not acceptable, and how do we write it in a contract? In other words, so everybody will know what they are expected to, how they is expected to behave. So what I want to do today is dive a little bit deep into that notion of Shechenim, neighbors. And as we know, Shechenim and Shechinah, the divine spirits, come from the same root. God's Shekhinah is dwelling in the Mikdash and in the Mishkan. And neighbors, we are dwelling next to each other. So what can we understand from this beautiful connection between Shechenim, neighbors, and Shekhinah, God's divine presence? So I'm sharing the sources, and let's see. Okay, so first of all, in the beginning of Bava Batra, and we hear it in the Mishnah, there is the notion that the Beit Din can make somebody do something they don't want to do, and they compel a partner in the courtyard to contribute to the building of a gatehouse and a door for the courtyard. In other words, you're part of neighbors around one courtyard, the way that they used to live. You cannot say I don't need a gate. I don't mind everyone to come in and out. No, you're part of the group. You're part of the courtyard. They can make you contribute to building a gatehouse and a door. And Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is saying not all courtyards are fit for a gatehouse. In other words, yes, it is flexible. It depends. Just to tell us how flexible all of those laws are. It is flexible. Not every courtyard needs that. And then there's another interesting question: how long must a man dwell in a town to count as one of the men in the town, as part of the city? Okay, because someone can come and say, "No, I'm living here only 1 year. It's not my problem, and I shouldn't contribute to that." And the Mishnah is saying 12 months. You have a year. You completed a year in a place. You are part of the community, of the city, of the neighborhood, for zchuyot and for chovot, for what your rights and your obligations. And if he has purchased a dwelling place, he immediately counts as one of the people of the town. Okay, and that's very important. One can live in a different country and buy a house in a different country. He has to pay the municipality all the taxes that he needs, and he cannot say no, but I'm not living there, so I don't have to do that. He is definitely part of that community. We saw in Baba Metzia another place where the people of the city compel a partner, and they kofin bnei ha'ir livnot bet hakneset veliknot sefer Torah v'neviim. Someone who lives in a city cannot say, I don't care about shul, I don't need a shul, or I don't need the sefer Torah, and you can force him to be part of that thing which contributes to the common good of the entire neighbors in that city. And another quote from our Baba Batra is the residents of the courtyard can compel each inhabit of the courtyard to financially participate in the building of a gatehouse and a door to the jointly owned courtyard. Okay, and that is chomad latayim uvorech. In other words, its difference is that here it was a door for that courtyard, and here is ir choma, a gate to the city, and which is definitely much more safe. And it's unsafe to live in the city without a wall and a gate. So if you refuse, Beit Adin can make you join and give money for that, because you are part of a group, you are part of a community, and you must contribute to the community, and not think to yourself that when I go inside my house and I close the door, there's nothing between me and the outside. This is not the way that Chachamim and the Torah and the Halakha is viewing the relationship between an individual and a community. So much that the Rambam in Laws of Neighbors, Hilchot Shechenim, says anyone who has made a threshing floor in their area, or set a bathroom, or any work which involved dust, ash, or such things, must distance those enterprises so that the ash, the smell of the bathroom, or dust will not reach their fellow, in order not to damage them. I have a responsibility. Not all, if I do something in my house and I say nobody need to care about it, it's my business. No, if it's affecting the outside and my neighbors, it's a bad smell or dirt or a mess, I must take to account, and people should not do that. Now, the idea, and of course we all think and know stories of neighbors who started, unfortunately, big fights, sometimes even all the way up to court, because they accuse the other neighbor of damaging or hurting or making too much noise or making too much of a mess. And maybe, here is the right time to mention a famous sentence by Chachamim. They're saying it in accordance to Korach, and they say, Oy larasha ve'oy leshcheno. So when you come into a new place, or when you buy a house, make sure that your neighbors are good neighbors, because if you have a bad neighbor, or a wicked neighbor, more to say, that can influence you, can influence the relationship, and can really make you miserable. In Korach, it was also a negative moral influence and religious influence on his neighbors. So Chachamim are very aware on the fact that we're dealing with people, and it's of course not always we can find out how well behaved or what a good of a person is our neighbor, but they're saying because it's flexible, and because there are no right, there's no black and white in terms of even the laws of neighbors, you also have to make sure that you're doing everything you can in order to sustain a healthy relationship with neighbors. Another instruction that the Torah is giving us in terms of our neighbors is lo tasig gvul re'echa. Thou shalt not remove the neighbor's landmark, which they of all time have set. In other words, don't mess with somebody else's property. And don't slowly, gradually say, oh, I'm just sitting down, or just taking another piece of land, or they're not gonna mind. This is להשיג גבול רעך. It's removing the neighbor's landmark. It's forbidden. And this statement from the Torah, I think we should also hear in those words the understanding that we each have our own place in the world. And if this is what we got, this is what we have, we shouldn't look into our neighbor's territory and try to take that, because then even spiritually, I'm even wanting to say is like you are interfering with their own being. And indeed, Rav Nachman Rambam, in his laws of neighbors, is also saying, look, some things are clear, some laws are black and white, but the laws of neighbors are really difficult. And someone can say, but I'm allowed. Nobody said it's not allowed. And the Rambam is saying, no, in the laws of neighbors, you also have to address and act with mercy and with goodness and justice. And says the Rambam, when a person sells property to an orphan below the age of majority, the neighbor is not given the right to displace the purchase. It's the law of Ben Mitzar, Ben Matzra. If I want to sell my field, I should first go to my next door neighbor and ask them if they want to buy my field. So the Rambam is saying, if you sell your property to orphans, you should not go and ask your neighbor whether he wants that property, because they're orphans. This is, if they gave the money, this is what they can do. Don't take it away from them. And says the Rambam, for goodness and justice is to act generously towards such individuals more than a neighbor. In other words, yes, you have a neighbor, but remember that the Torah expects us to be on a higher level of ethic behavior. And to sell that to orphans, to sell your place your field to orphan, is to do hatov ve'ayashar. That's to do justice. That's to do goodness. That's a generous. That's come out of generosity, and don't just think. So here, as we see here, it's a gray area. I have a neighbor. I have a good relationship with him. No, but I have to use my common sense. And if orphans come, and later the other option, Rambam says it's a woman who is not used to just go around and check, what's available. And if she came to you, just give it to her. Don't go to your neighbor. Obviously, the idea of neighbors and we live next to each other brings to mind the words of Bil'am HaRasha, when he's blessing the people of Israel to say, Matovu alecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Israel, how fair are your tents, O Yaakov, your dwellings, O Israel. And Rashi is saying, he said this because he saw that the entrance of their tents were not exactly facing each other. Okay, so there was some kind of privacy that they kept for themselves and for their neighbors. And they didn't put an open tent towards an open tent, and everyone can see what's happening in the tent. This is the good that Bil'am is seeing in the way that the tents of Am Yisrael are facing. But the word mishkenotecha, and again we come here to see, mishkenotecha is your dwelling place, but mishkenotecha is also the way that you are neighbors, Shechenim. And Rashi is saying he's adding, what is a mishkenotecha? Means the encampments, as the Targum has it. And another explanation, how goodly are the tent of Shiloh and the temple when these flourished, and the sacrifice were offered therein to atone for you. In other words, Rashi is reminding us that even though Bilam is looking at the neighborhood of Am Yisrael and how they care about the privacy of their neighbors, of their Shechenim, how good is the Mishkenot of Yisrael, Rashi is saying, but it's echoing a Mishkan, the tabernacle. It's echoing the dwelling of God, Shechinah. And therefore, it's also what he says is the How goodly are the tents of Shiloh, Oel Moed, Oel Shiloh, and the temple where God is dwelling and allowing us to atone for our sins. And the Seforno, Rabbeinu Ovadia Seforno, an Italian commentator, Jewish commentator from the 15th century, and the Seforno is saying Mishkanotecha, a reference to the synagogues of the Jews all over, as well as to their temples when these existed. In other words, the Seforno is saying we have not only our house, our home, part of a neighborhood, part of a city, and we have neighbors, but also our synagogues are a place of Shekhinah, our place of dwelling. And when we don't have the Mikdash anymore, it comes, we open the Beit Knesset as a place for us to dwell, and a place for God to dwell, and a place for davening, and that which can enhance the relationship not only between God and the people, but also between neighbors in that community. And I wanna end with two beautiful midrashim that are taking that idea of Shechenim and Shechinah, neighbors and Shechinah, God's holy presence. And the midrash is saying this text is related to the words from Shir HaShirim, when I come to my garden, my sister bride. And Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman said, when the Holy One, blessed be He, created the world, He longed to have an abode below, just as He had on high. Well, God has neighbors up in heaven, angels, but He longed to be the neighbor of human beings, and to have a dira, to have a dwelling place in this world, as he has on high. Having created Adam, He commanded and said to him, "You may freely eat of any tree in the garden, but as for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you may not eat of it." In other words, in the neighborhood of God, in Gan Eden, God set rules and God set borders and limits in order for everybody to dwell good and happy and well. But when Adam disobeyed this order, then he transgressed against his commandment, and the Holy One, blessed be He, said this to him, to Adam, "This is what I longed for, that just I have a dwelling on high, I would likewise have one below. Now when I have given you one command, you have not kept it." Immediately the Holy One, blessed be He, removed His divine presence up to the first firmament. In other words, and the Midrash continues to say, each time there's another disappointment and God is taking His divine presence, is moving it even higher and higher and higher. There's seven rekim, seven skies above. In other words, we are getting further and further away from the option to be the neighbors of God, and God is taking His Shekhinah away from this world. And then, I didn't bring the end, so I'll just tell you the end by heart. And then the Midrash says, so when will God go back and say, "I come to my garden, my sister bride"? When the people of Israel will build a Mishkan, then God will come back down, bringing down His Shekhinah to dwell in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, to go back to His garden, to be with His sister bride, to be with the people of Israel, to be in this world. And another midrash that is echoing a similar thing is saying in Vayikra Rabbah, "I said to you, says God, they shall take me a gift, so that I will dwell in your midst, and they shall make me a sanctuary, as it were. The Holy One, blessed He, said, take me, and I will reside in your midst." In other words, when God is saying, take a gift for me, or so that you shall make me a sanctuary, says the Midrash, what God really is saying is, please accept me as one of your neighbors. Take me and make me so I will reside in your midst. And I think that if we take to account that to be a good neighbor is just more than just being polite, but being able to do something high morally, and to keep good and just and ethical and graceful acts between human beings, then I surely believe we will feel the dwelling of God amongst us, not only in the Beit Knesset or in the Beit Midrash, but truly in everyday life, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our cities.